Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we are in Rockford, Illinois, and we're going to check out a really historic and interesting home that was built in the 1800s. There are a lot of rooms in this place. It's a very interesting place, and it's also a very notoriously haunted place. It's been featured on Ghost Adventures. Jack Osborne was here a few months back filming a segment for a show that he was producing. But this is a phenomenal place, and today we are going to get in here and I'm going to take you on a tour and show you around. Now, the architecture in this home is unlike anything else you've ever seen. So come along and we'll explore it together. Now, for a little bit of history, this is called the Tinker Swiss Cottage, and it was built by a man named Robert Tinker, and it took, I believe, it was a couple decades, I think, that he spent building this, but it started as a one-room cottage and became a much, much bigger home the way that you see it now. It is being preserved by the city, so we're going to go back here and take a look at something else that I always thought was kind of intriguing. There is this bridge here that you can walk over that goes over, this is called Kent Creek. Something that's a little bit creepy about walking this, but we'll do it. Now, as you can see, this house is built right on an edge of limestone. I can't wait to get in here. This place there is so much legend and lore about this place in terms of just the history of it, the architecture, and the haunted nature of it. But this is the walkway. It looks like they left the gate open. But take a good look at that. It's fascinating. Now, just a little bit more information. Like I said, it was built by Robert Tinker, and he had a wife named Mary, and the two of them were one of the most influential couples in the area. Robert served as mayor of Rockford. He also helped found the Rockford Park District, I believe, and he was president of a railroad. So they had a lot of money, and Mary, her widow, her first husband died, and he was a man who ran a pretty successful business in this area. But she passed away in 1901, and then Robert remarried and married her niece, but I believe they all passed away in this house. I could be wrong on that. We're going to be meeting up with somebody who knows a little bit more than me about the history of this place, so we'll find out a little more details from the proper sources. But supposedly there's a red room upstairs that there's been a lot of strange paranormal occurrences that's happened there. But this is just a really fascinating home. All right, we're inside the building now, and this right here is Sam, and she's the executive director here, and she's going to walk around with us and tell us a little bit of history about the family and a few interesting facts about some of the rooms here.
Yeah, I'm so glad you guys are here today. So this is the parlor. This is where visitors would be greeted. You would have your birthday parties, your weddings, and your funerals. So the museum is currently staged for a Victorian funeral. During the month of October, we put out our 1800s coffin, and we talk about different ways that the Victorians mourned and had their grieving practices.
It's quite a room.
So we do know that there were about 7 or 8 funerals held in this room. And some of them were family members, some of them were very close friends. You always wanted to have your funeral in a room that had rounded corners if possible, because the Victorians believed it was possible for your loved one's soul to get stuck in a square corner. But if it's round, they kind of go round and round until they can find a good window to shoot out of. So from the parlor, we go next into the library. This is hands down my favorite room of the museum. The Tinkers had over 800 books in their collection. Some of them include personal journals. For example, Robert Tinker kept a journal from the time he was 14 until he was 86. So we know what happened through most of their lives, which is just amazing. But in here, a lot of the woodwork was actually done by Robert Tinker himself. The ceiling was designed by one of their nephews. It was designed by Robert, but painted by one of the nephews. Robert Tinker created the spiral staircase that you see in here today. So this outer bend was a single piece of walnut that he steamed for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for 2 years, every day, nonstop, until it worked just right. So the library does tend to be one of the most active rooms of the house. It was one of the public spaces where they entertained a lot of visitors, and they seem to enjoy continuing entertaining visitors. There are folks who will see either full-bodied apparitions or shadows moving around on the upper library. Other times we will get a lot of knocks in here. From time to time we'll hear somebody upstairs call out, "Hello," or "Hey," to which the group always looks at us and goes, "Who's that?" And we always have to say, "Your guess is as good as ours." But in here we've also had a lot of great ghost box sessions. A lot of EVPs have been captured in here, including one of a young girl saying, you can hear the two investigators in the clip before her talking about how the train was coming by. And then you hear this third woman's voice, who wasn't in the room, say, "I don't like trains. Trains bring death."
Wow.
So for us, we believe that was likely Marcia, because Marcia, who was the niece that lived here, was upstairs looking out the window as she saw her Uncle Robert get hit by the train while he was crossing the tracks. His left foot was snagged, and he was dragged for 30 feet before it came to a stop. And so he was rushed to the hospital, given a few shots of whiskey, and his foot was amputated from the ankle down. Now, knowing that story, we have good friends of ours that have an investigative team, and they are called Ghost Head Soup. They have a clip where all of them were hanging out here in the Parlor library area, and they called out, "Come join us in the parlor, Mr. Tinker." And their team lead made a joke about how it's going to take him a minute because he only has 1 foot. And the entire group heard a disembodied male's voice go, "I'm here."
Wow.
Through the library, we have the dining room. So one great thing about our museum is 98% of what you see is all from the Tinker and Dorr family. So all of their furniture, their dishes, the murals on the walls are what they had. There are a few things like our smoke detectors and fire extinguishers that are obviously modern, as well as lace curtains, any of the white candlesticks, and any fake food you may see. But otherwise, this is their belongings. And when you think about it, not only can places be haunted, but so can things.
Sure.
So we have over 10,000 pieces within this collection from this one group of people. And so we do rotate these items throughout the year. During the month of October, one of my favorite pieces is actually on exhibit in the smoking porch. And you'll see we have a human skull. This has been genetically tested, so we know it was from a young white male between the ages of 18 to 25, and it is a phrenology skull. Now we know that phrenology is a phony science. There is nothing credible behind it, but the Victorians thought they were onto something. And so next to the skull, you will actually see a document there. That is Robert Tinker's phrenology report. So he went into Chicago, and they told him what the bumps and grooves on his head dictated about his life. And so we have this out just for the month of October. But the rootwood furniture you see in here and throughout the house, Robert Tinker made himself as well.
Okay, now who are the two pictures up here?
So the top one, that gentleman there, is Robert Tinker himself.
Okay.
And then below him is the older niece, Marcia, who lived here most of her life as well.
Now we'll head upstairs and learn a little bit more of the history up here. And this is also one of the parts of the house that are a little bit more spooky than some of the rest.
So we'll go up to Robert Tinker's personal bedroom. So in here, this is where we get that heavy European style, from the chalet style door to the wood planked walls, the wood beam ceilings. So we are called the Tinker Swiss Cottage because Robert Tinker fell in love with Swiss architecture, began building his home in 1865, modeled it after a Swiss chalet, and that is where we get the Tinker Swiss name from.
Okay.
It is called a cottage. It is in fact a 22-room mansion. So the Tinker and Dorr family, they were from England, and in the English countryside, your homes are called cottages, hence the Tinker Swiss Cottage name. So this does tend to have a little bit of extra activity in it as well, which makes sense when you think about it being their very personal space.
Sure.
We've had a lot of people who will get cigar smoke smells in here. We've had people who get tapped on the shoulder. Maybe you're in their way as they're walking through. But this is all of their stuff again. We have his bed set, his chamber pot set, Mary's hairbrush, her hat pins, the first wife, are all on display on the dresser. The family Bible is in this room as well, which dates to 1816 and is one of the oldest pieces we have in our collection.
Wow.
A lot of people will also see Robert coming in and out of his bedroom because we have an entrance to the second floor of the library.
The craftsmanship's amazing in here.
Mm-hmm. Again, most of the library woodwork Robert Tinker did himself. Self-taught artist, businessman, genius all around. So the red and yellow rooms are our rotating exhibit spaces. So what you see in here today is the Audubon experience. We have first edition of John Audubon's Birds of America and Quadrupeds of North America, and they are displayed with taxidermied artifacts from the Burpee Museum of Natural History. And so we have this amazing collaborative exhibit.
Okay.
But this yellow room was the servants' bedroom. So anywhere from 1 to 3 girls would share this room. Most of the maids that worked for them did have families here in town that they would come early in the morning and leave in the afternoon. But there were a couple that would stay overnight as well. In the red room, that is where we had more of the family member bedrooms.
Okay.
They kind of rotated rooms. And so it was Mary's father's Josephus's room, then Hannah had it, Marcia had it, Theodore had it, Will had it. Pretty much whoever felt like being up in the red room, I guess. But in this area, we do get a good amount of activity, especially with the servants' stairwell here. You'll still hear footsteps coming up and down the stairs. You'll see people peeking around corners here. Doorknobs will rattle. All sorts of fun, spooky things.
Wow. How often do you actually see apparitions in here?
It depends who you're asking. So I will say I've got a little bit more of a sensitivity, so I tend to see them more often. But my coworkers who have a little less sensitivity in that sense will still see shadows move, or they'll say, I was in there cleaning and they were just watching me. I knew they were watching me, but other times we'll have a regular daytime tour and I'll be talking to the group and then somebody will say, who was the lady in that dress that just walked behind you? And I'll have to step aside and let them look, and they can see there's nobody there. So, it's not super often, but it's often enough that we've got a pretty good reputation. But the one thing I always like to tell people when we're talking about paranormal activity is this is a very safe place to do it because it is all positive energy. It's a family who was great with the community. They loved each other. They loved their city, and they're just happy that their home is still remembered and that they're still remembered. So nobody in the last 81 years we've been a museum has ever been shoved or scratched or hit or anything like that. Favorites with his bright red eyes. I feel like that was probably a artistic choice maybe, but now we've got Henry the Hawk.
That is neat. Henry?
Henry the Hawk. Yeah. So the Red Room, we do know there were 4 or 5 deaths that occurred in here. And so I like to remind people, just because somebody's passed doesn't necessarily mean that's where it's going to be active. But, you know, with this room, it does tend to be a little bit more active. We'll get a lot of people that walk in here and they will instantly get a little dizzy, or they'll get a little distracted. And it's never anything harmful, but they're always, you know, a little surprised.
Now, I'm not sure what the story is in some of these other rooms, but we'll take a quick look in here. But there are 22 rooms in this house. And this was Robert's room. We were already in here. Here's one of the other rooms. Now, as you heard from Sam, there's a lot of interesting history here, and this was obviously a very well-off family. It's a very huge house. The artwork is nice, and as you saw, there are numerous exhibits in here. But the stairwell, it is, I'm not gonna lie, it is a little creepy of a house, but it is beautiful. It's definitely not many people in the mid to late 1800s that could have afforded this. Back in the library again. It's got a feel in here, kind of like the Haunted Mansion at Disney World, if you've ever been there. Here's another sitting room type of room here. There's a few things on display. Now the lighting in here is a little spooky. It's getting dark right now, so the vibe in here is a little bit different. But we're gonna go downstairs quick and see what's down there.
Robert's response to the sentence was, I prefer him, honey. It was a lot easier to
Now the question is, would you walk around this place by yourself? There's the door going outside. And this right here must be Robert Tinker's office. Now, they said before I turned the camera on that he is often seen still in this office. There's another room here. Now, just from a history standpoint, now for some reason the audio cut off on this video, so I'm going to be doing a voiceover for about the next 30 seconds. But this was the kitchen in the basement, and for whatever reason, once I got into this part of the home, the audio did not work. So when I went back and re-listened to this, there was no audio. But this area in here, for whatever reason, there were no lights on, but this was the maid's kitchen downstairs. And at this point, there was nobody else downstairs, but walking down this way, that was Robert Tinker's office down here in the center. And here's a couple of pictures that were on the walls. Now we're back in the conservatory, and as you can see, it's pretty dark out now. But I just want to send a huge thank you to Tinker Swiss Cottage and Sam for the information and allowing us to be here tonight, and so I could bring you the history of a really interesting home. The history was interesting. The architecture is absolutely amazing. If you're ever in the area, I highly recommend a visit. But that's all I have for today. So thank you so much for watching, and have a safe and happy Halloween season. Take care, everybody.